We've been going through this study over the last 4 weeks. We've been going through this study on hope, entitled Hope is Here. And we launched this study. We started off by looking at and talking about how Jesus offers hope for the weary, for the burdened. And then we followed that up by talking about and looking at how Jesus offers hope for the sinner, for the broken. And last week, we looked at and talked about how Jesus provides hope for the underdog, how God calls and uses the unlikely to do the amazing. And that if we are obedient and faithful and step out in faith, that regardless of our abilities, that God is able to do amazing things through us. Amen. Well, this morning we are concluding this series on hope, looking at how Jesus offers hope for the doubter. Maybe not the topic that you thought we were going to be closing on, but for those who are just wrestling with and struggling with belief. Yet struggling and wrestling with what they believe, with the truth of the gospel. Is this really true? Is this really reliable? And see, God created us as curious creatures, that even from a young age, that we are inquisitive by nature, that we want to know how everything works. Every parent will attest to the curiosity of a small child who asks insistently, why? I see heads nodding. Why? How? I see fingers being pointed. How does that work? Why does that work? Well, why this? Why that? And just wanting to know and demanding to know and figure out the world. Well, that curiosity is what you expect of us being created as intelligent sons and daughters made in the image of a brilliant and artistic, creative God. That we are born to love and pursue truth. And that we long for making sense of this universe. And that's a God-given curiosity that we have. And as we grow and as we mature, that continues to be something that continues to be a journey that we're on of figuring out, well, what is it that we believe? Why do we believe this? And regardless of what you're taught growing up, what your parents taught you, whether or not you went to church, what your pastor taught you, that we all come to a point or multiple points in our lives where we embark on this journey to actually question, do I truly own my beliefs? Do I truly believe this for myself? Or am I just regurgitating what I have heard someone else say? Am I borrowing the faith of somebody else? And that's how it starts, is that we're taught. But at some point in life, we need to stop and say, wait a minute, do I own this? Do I have a relationship with Jesus? Because it's not my parents' relationship with Jesus that's going to get me into heaven, that it's based on my relationship with Jesus. Do I own this? I remember myself, when I was a teenager, when I was 14 years old, I remember I never doubted whether or not God existed whatsoever. But I remember coming to this point in life where I said, but I need to know for myself, is this mine? If everyone who taught me this were to fall away from faith, were to renounce it, would it still be mine? Would I still have this relationship with Jesus? Or am I just repeating someone else's faith? And so it's something that all of us at some point, and that's not just for people who grew up in religious homes. You grow up in a Muslim home, you grow up in an atheistic or agnostic home, to say, do I truly believe or disbelieve that which I have been taught or told? Or do I own this for myself? And so that's an important piece of maturing. And you see that curious nature coming out, inquisitive nature as we mature. And so experiencing more of life and hearing other perspectives and other point of views can lead us to doubt. But also going through a painful circumstance, going through difficulties in life can cause us to question what we believe, can challenge our faith, and cause us to question, is that truly what I believe? Do I own that? And that can lead us to a place of doubt. It can lead us to a place of hopelessness, a place of brokenness. It can cause you to ask questions like, does God really exist? Does he really care? Does he really know? Does he really listen? Do my prayers matter? Is he really capable? And sometimes Christians have been afraid to ask questions and say, well, I can't ask that. Good Christians don't ask questions like that. Real Christians aren't allowed to have a doubt or a question. Real Christians can ask that. And maybe we say that to ourselves. Maybe we say that to somebody else who has a sincere question. But see, God is not afraid of our questions or our doubts. That the God that we serve is not afraid of truth. He is the author of truth. That he wants us to be open and honest with him. He hasn't called us to just say empty words that don't actually mean anything to us, that we don't truly believe. He's not fragile, like sometimes people believe that he is. If you read the Psalms, if you read Habakkuk, you read the prophets, you see them being openly, painfully honest with God, saying, God, I don't understand. God, how can you allow this? God, what's going on? I don't get it. And what you see is that God truly wants a genuine, sincere, heartfelt relationship with us, not the empty words. If you think for a moment about what if in a marriage, if a spouse has serious doubts or concerns about their spouse, and they hide it and bury it and don't address it and don't talk about it, how healthy is that marriage? How strong is that relationship? Take it even further and say, what if that other spouse is omniscient and actually knows your hearts and your thoughts, and that you have those struggles, but that you are hiding it and running from it? How healthy is that relationship? And that God knows our hearts, that he knows our thoughts. And again, he's not afraid of your questions. He's the author of truth. In the gospel accounts, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they're full of scenarios where people are bringing Jesus questions. They're bringing him doubts. They're bringing him concerns and challenges. And you see him respond in different ways. But one of the things about Jesus is he has this amazing, unmatched ability to see into the human heart of the questioner. To know, to see and know what lies beneath the surface in the heart of the questioner. And what we see in his responses is that Jesus is incredibly patient and gentle and loving when he responds to a genuine, sincere question. Now, it's quite different when you see him responding to the religious leaders who are asking not from a place of genuine curiosity or genuine concern, but they're actually asking to try and trap him or trick him or try to fool or mislead others in the crowds around. But Jesus is patient and gentle with those who come to him with genuine, heartfelt questions. And so we have several examples of this throughout the gospel accounts. And one of the most commonly known and looked at scenarios we're going to talk about this morning. But it's interesting, it's not these questions are not just coming from the people who aren't following him. They're not just coming from random crowds, although they are, but even from his own followers, his own disciples. The ones who you think, well, they can't have questions. They should know this stuff. And it's one of the things that lends such credibility to the Gospels is that at many times, it doesn't reflect well on even the ones who write them. It doesn't reflect well on the disciples when they continually just don't get what Jesus is saying. And you see him wrestling with this. Well, before we get into the particular verses that we're going to be studying and situation we're going to look at this morning, I want to try to, as much as I'm able, try to put us into the sandals of the man who's struggling with doubt that we're looking at this morning. And so to do that, we're going to look at Jesus' relationship with his disciples. That this group of men, these 12 men who Jesus calls to follow him, to leave their lives and families behind, follow him, and listen to him, learn from him, live their lives with him. That this is not just, when they see Jesus on the cross, they see him being publicly beaten and tortured and humiliated and shamed and mocked. They see him being accused, being treated like the worst kind of criminal, nailed to a tree. This isn't just a friend. This isn't just a teacher. This isn't just a mentor. This isn't just a roommate who they lived with. This was their Messiah, their King. This was their hope. This was the promise of God to his people that was nailed to that tree. And if you can just imagine for a moment, on that Friday night, seeing Jesus so humiliated, broken, shamed, tortured, and killed. They had no expectation of this. What they looked forward to and expected of the Messiah was a political king to come in and free them from Rome and to lead them politically as their king and ruler. They didn't expect the cross. They didn't come to the tomb Sunday morning with balloons and to celebrate. They came broken. They were, yeah, you're right, Tom. It was the women who came, but they came. They were broken. It was in this place of doubt, in this place of brokenness, of God, what are you doing? Where Jesus meets them. This is the place where Jesus meets them. Not Friday night, not on Saturday, but that Sunday evening. We're going to go ahead and jump to John chapter 20, starting in verse 19. On the evening of that first day of the week, and this is the Sunday, Resurrection Sunday, when the disciples were together with the doors locked for fear of the Jews, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." See, on top of that pain and grief, of loss, of disappointment, of just not understanding what God's doing. That on top of all of that, they're also afraid because of their connection and relationship with Jesus. And look what they just did to Jesus. They're afraid on top of all of those other emotions and feelings. So they're meeting behind locked doors. And it was here that Jesus meets them. John doesn't even try to tell us how he gets into this locked room. But that Jesus stood among them. Notice he's not hovering. It's not a spirit, not a ghost. It's not a hallucination or a vision. Jesus, bodily resurrected, stood there before them, amongst them, on that Sunday evening, first Christian worship service. And Jesus says, "Peace be with you." He gives them peace amidst of this doubt and brokenness where they are. Peace be with you. After he said this, he showed them his hands and his side. And the disciples are overjoyed. They're overflowed with joy when they see the Lord. That instantly that changed. And we see that in an instant their grief was overwhelmed by joy. Their doubt was overwhelmed with truth. Their fear was overwhelmed with hope and peace. That Jesus was there, that he had risen. And you'd think this would be enough. This would be enough for the disciples. This would be enough for the early church that they have this, that the apostles have witnessed, have seen the risen Christ. But then we read on, verse 24, "Now Thomas, called Didymus, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, 'We have seen the Lord.' But he said to them, 'Unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails were, and my hand into his side, I will not believe.' Unless I can see it, unless I can touch it, unless I can verify it myself, I will not believe it." And you see that Thomas is very guarded, that his faith has been crushed, and that he doesn't want to get his hopes up to only be let down again. And so he's trying to protect himself and protect his heart by saying, "No, I will not believe." And these are not just random people telling him this. They're not even just friends telling him this. They are the disciples, the apostles of Jesus, the people who Thomas has lived with and served with and ministered with for all this time. And yet, Thomas struggled to believe their first-hand apostolic eyewitness account of the bodily risen Jesus. That Thomas refused to believe without seeing and touching the wounds of Jesus himself. Have you ever heard something so crazy, so outlandish that you just couldn't believe it? Well, this for Thomas just is so unbelievable. And again, he's guarded. So a week later, the second church service, Sunday Christian service, we read in verse 26, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Does that sound familiar? Yet again, doors locked. Jesus stands in their midst. Again, not a vision, not a dream, but Jesus stands in their midst. And while the 11 of them are there, so Judas is not there and wasn't in the previous account either, but the 11 of them are there, Jesus focuses in on and hones in on Thomas. The rest of the disciples are still there for the rest of this circumstance, but yet Jesus is focused on Thomas. And he says, and then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here. See my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe." So Jesus sees Thomas's heart and sees his struggle. He doesn't respond with anger, with reprimand. He doesn't kick the doors in and throw them out like money changers in the temple. No, Jesus is gentle and patient and gracious, but he also shows him the truth. And he calls him to stop doubting and to believe. Stop doubting and believe. Thomas responds and says, "My Lord and my God." Like that's all that he can get out. Is my Lord and my God. Responding in faith and realizing how wrong he was to doubt the first-hand apostolic eyewitness accounts that had already been shared with him. And Jesus says, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. But blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed. See, like Thomas, we also have the first-hand apostolic eyewitness accounts. Multiply attested, early attested, within the lifetimes of the first-hand eyewitnesses, that we also have that privilege, that great benefit of those accounts for us to see and believe and understand that who Jesus is and what he accomplished, and that we are called to have faith and believe and to trust the eyewitness accounts that we have. And so it's interesting that Thomas, that we have this connection with Thomas, that while we weren't there when Jesus first appeared to the disciples, to see him and touch him and to see his wounds with our eyes, but we have the opportunity to believe without seeing and touching. And we're called to believe, to have faith, even though we've not seen with our eyes. When we struggle with doubt, we're called to be open and honest with God, who knows our hearts anyway, who knows our thoughts anyway, and to lay our questions at the feet of Jesus and trust in him. And trust that God, again, is the author of truth. He is not afraid of truth. And that when we have sincere, heartfelt, genuine questions or struggles or doubts, that Jesus is a safe place for us to bring them. And that he will offer peace and hope. And so this morning, I don't know where you're at, what you may be struggling with, or maybe others around you that might be struggling with doubt. And maybe you have struggled with, how do I reach them? How do I love them? And maybe you have been tempted to say, well, just get over it. But that we are to be the hands and feet of Jesus and to live out lives that reflect who Jesus is and the truth of the gospel, that reflect his character. And to encourage people to genuinely and openly, sincerely pursue that loving relationship with Jesus. So whatever doubts you may have, whatever struggles you may have, lay them at the feet of Jesus. Would you bow with me as I pray? Lord, we come before you. And God, I thank you for being the God who is our hope. God, that you have given us this curiosity. You've given us this drive to learn and to understand and to pursue your truth. And that, Lord, you've made yourself so evident in nature, so evident in how you've created us and wired us, and Lord, that you've given us the benefit of your inspired word, and that you've called us to believe and to follow. Lord, would you move us, Lord, to respond to your truth? Not with empty words and saying what we think that you just want to hear, but Lord, that we would sincerely, openly come to you and just grow deeper in our love and knowledge of you, and our faith and trust in you, Lord. That's in your name that I pray. Amen.